Alright, so on today's speed duel deck profile, we'll be looking at my favorite deck to play currently, which is Blade Knight. I think Blade Knight is just an extremely strong monster, especially with some of the new support that has come out for him. So to start off with, we're playing 3 copies of Blade Knight, and his effect is that if you have 1 or less cards in your hand, you gain 400 attack, so puts him at a 2000 attack beater just to start off with, if you're able to get rid of most of the cards in your hand, which you usually are. And if he destroys a monster that has a flip effect, it just negates it. So, I mean, basically safe from Man-Eater Bug or anything like that, which is pretty huge as more people are slowly starting to play cards that are flip effects. So, I think just to start off with, I mean, he's a really strong card to have, but where it really gets spicy is when you combine it with a card from the new set, which is Command Knight. And this card is able to really synergize well with Blade Knight. Not only does she allow all of your warrior monsters to gain 400 attack, which would stack with Blade Knight, it makes it so that your other monsters your opponent's monsters have to attack your other monsters. So if you were to just have Blade Knight and Command Knight on the field, and let's say you didn't have any cards in your hand, you would have Blade Knight with 2400 attack and Command Knight with 1600 attack, and that's just a really strong monster. It's hard to get over a 2400 attack monster, especially when this card's protected. So it's definitely a force to be reckoned with. If you happen to get out 2 Command Knights, that just makes it really insane. You create a really strong board. I know that's not always possible, but sometimes it is. Sometimes you're able to get up 3 monsters just by normal summoning them. So I think that's definitely necessary for this deck, is 3 Command Knight. Next, actually our last 2 monsters is YuGiOh. And not only do I play this because it's just a pretty good 1700 attack beater, but it's a normal monster, and I think the rationale is that if you were to get Heat Wave or a few other cards that specifically target effect monsters, that you have this guy to come out with. So, and that's actually, I mean, in a number of duels, actually been a determining factor in the way the duel is going to go. I mean, if they're able to get out Heat Wave, otherwise you'd kind of be stuck and you wouldn't really have much, but I think just being able to put YuGiOh on the field is kind of like a surprise sometimes. So I think that's just pretty much necessary. I think really good. Obviously, it drives well with Command Knight. If you get YuGiOh and Command Knight on the field, you have a 2100 YuGiOh, 1600 Command Knight. So again, it's pretty powerful. Just normal summoning 2 cards, but I think just a card that a lot of people seem to sleep on is Sword of the Dragon's Soul. So I play 2 of these, and I think this just obviously synergizes well with an all-warrior deck, but it's just so powerful having 700 attack. I mean, there's been times where I've gotten both of these onto 1 monster, and I just think it's so great. I wouldn't play 3, though, because I think it clogs up all of your spell and trap zones, which, I mean, obviously that's pretty good to have, a monster or 3 monsters equipped with this, however you happen to allocate them. But I think it just becomes a little bit too much, and your monsters just become like either one becomes too strong or all of them aren't strong enough and you can't really play any other cards. So I would say just 2 is probably good enough just to get over any threats that you need to. But the bonus that, I mean, if it battles a dragon monster, that it destroys it. So, I mean, not that blue eyes are a huge issue anymore, but I mean, if you were to battle Serpent Knight Dragon, or, I mean, any dragon like red eyes or blue eyes from that deck, I mean, it would be able to just kill it if it doesn't get over it itself. So that's always nice. But I think, I mean, just 700 attack, I mean, it's just so strong. Again, with all these buffs, like Blade Knight getting buffed, Command Knight buffing everything, it just puts your monsters in the high 2000s really quickly, and that's just a lot to deal with. I mean, for your opponent, especially on maybe say turn 2. Another card that is just invaluable, I would say at this point, just because of how versatile it is Kunai with Chain. So I would definitely play 3 of those. I would definitely play 3 of those in probably any deck, to be honest. But in this deck especially, you can switch a attacking monster to defense mode and buff it by 500. So, I mean, and you get to choose what you want to do. So, I mean, if you just want to add 500 to your monster, that's always a good strategy just for Kunai, and not switch it to defense and keep the attack going. So there's a lot of versatility with Kunai. If you don't have any monsters on the field, it basically acts as a one monster windstorm. So there's just so much versatility, and I think it's just something that you just almost need in your deck at this point. There's really no reason not to just put them in here, or at least put them in the side deck, because it's just so helpful in almost every situation. I mean, there's not really a time when you're not going to want a Kunai sitting in your back row. And speaking of back row, Dust Tornado is kind of a staple at this point in terms of removing back row from your opponent. It is just really good. I mean, you have to wait a turn. Obviously, you have to set it, but just being able to pop anything, I think, is really huge. And the thing I've seen more and more is that, like, as more people play like field spells, it's always good to have stuff that pops just a field spell. You might have to wait a turn, but people are playing a lot more continuous spells and a lot more field spells. So just having that versatility where, I mean, you might have to deal with it for one turn while you set this card, but then you can just pop it on their next draw or something like that. So it's really good. It's really powerful. I think it's definitely really important to have in a deck like this, where basically you want to get out strong monsters and then just protect your monsters by using Kunai, using Dust Tornado, stuff like that. Just really helps to kind of slow down your opponent, and you can just buff your monsters more and more. Another card that just definitely slows down your opponent is Spirit Revo. They never see it coming, and it's always fun when you have, say, 2 in your hand. You just double Spirit Revo them. So that's always nice. But I know Spirit Revo are expensive, but I think they're, I would also say, invaluable. The effect is that if you don't know, you get to just drop this card from your hand to the graveyard when an opponent's monster is attacking, and you get to switch that monster into defense mode. So again, just kind of it's like a half Kunai or like a partial windstorm kind of just effect, and it's always been really helpful in a lot of duels. There's not many times that you'd want to keep the monster in attack mode, but that's why, like I said, Kunai is just really good, because it basically does that. It gives you the freedom to just let the attack to keep going, and then just buff your monster by 500 so that their monster hopefully gets destroyed. But Spirit Revo, if you're in a tough situation, it's always really good to have. It's again, it's kind of one of those things where you never don't want it in your hand. You kind of just always want to have that ability just to be able to play it. But I don't really see it going anywhere soon. I think it's going to be kind of a staple for a while. But our final 2 cards will be Ready for Intercepting, and this card actually has just so many more uses than I think a lot of people realize. Or maybe they do realize it, I don't know. But playing against decks like Blue Eyes or Relinquished, obviously, when they pop their Lord of D or their Relinquished, you can just put it face down, and it basically just shuts down their deck, which is obviously a really huge benefit. But what I think is even better is that if they played Warrior Elimination, you can just set your Warrior face down to kind of save it. If they played Mask of the Accursed and they equipped it to your monster and you don't know what else to do besides take 500 damage every standby phase, you can just set your monster, and then it just detaches all equipments, which, again, it's a really good way of getting out of a situation, because this deck, if they were to play Mask of the Accursed against it, it's really hard to do anything about it, because your monster just is stuck on the field, and you don't have any other monsters to tribute or anything like that. So you can't really easily get rid of that monster. So I would say this becomes just invaluable in that case as well. So it's just a great card to have, basically, for offense or defense. I think it's just so versatile that it's just, again, you just need to have it in this deck just to be able really to play the game. So I think that is going to do it for the main deck. And in terms of the side deck, we have 2 D-Spell, and these cards, again, I think it's just really good to have in the deck where if there isn't any reason to play Ready for Intercepting, you can just throw these in there, for example, and if they play a lot of continuous spells, a lot of field spells, that's always good to be able to use on this. And then it's just a bonus where if they have a face down, you can just play this and you get to know what their face down is. And if the spell gets destroyed, if not, you just get to see what the trap is. So it's really good. It's really, again, just versatile in knowing how to play in your strategy because, I mean, with Blade Knight, I mean, you don't want to attack into a Windstorm. You obviously can't see a Spear Karibo coming, but unless they have no cards in their hand. But you don't really want to attack into a Windstorm or a Kunai. So if you can find that out, then you'll know because Blade Knight has pretty low defense, and none of the effects of this deck really buff defense. So that's a thing that you really want to keep in mind, is that you really just want to make sure that there's nothing going to put you in defense, because that's going to just start to hurt your deck, but then it's not too bad to come back. I mean, like I said, if you get one more card in the field with like 1 or 2 equips, you're ready to go again. But so Possessed Dark Soul, this card I've been thinking of just taking out and switching for something else, maybe just for like a Night Beam or something like that. I don't know, but I mean, putting 2 in the side deck, it's helpful at times. If they obviously Relinquish is like the classic matchup that you'd want this against. But if they play zombies, that's not too bad. There's only so many 3-star zombies, I know that, but it's just good in a certain amount of cases that I think just there's like enough low-star monsters that have like flip effects or something like that you might just want to have this in there just to have that option of just putting on there. And then another thing is that it's just another monster that's not warrior type, so that's always good to have. Is just like, I mean, for some reason, if they just, I mean, are going nuts with like warrior elimination and Ready for Intercepting or something like that, you can just pop this, and then there you go. I mean, you have just a non-warrior type monster. Again, it doesn't benefit from everything. Like, it won't drive with Command Knight, it won't drive with like Sword Dragon Soul, but at least it's something. At least you can get something on the field. And maybe, like I said, take their monster. That really turns the tide pretty quick. Even if they just have 1 3-star monster, you put this on the field, I mean, immediately you just get like an open shot, assuming they don't have any back row or Sphere Karibo. So that's like, it's definitely helpful in certain situations, but I don't know if it's really deserving of a spot in the side deck permanently. But right now I play it and I think it's really good. So, and the final 2 cards in the side deck are Wild Tornado. And I play this just because that it does a similar effect to Dust Tornado where it destroys a spell or trap, but it has to be face up, which, again, it's more circumstantial than not, where you would have a face up card. You kind of want to destroy a set card. But if they have a lot of back row removal, if they're playing like a lot of Dice Spoon, a lot of Dust Tornado, this can quickly turn the tide of just getting a free monster pop, because if this card's destroyed when it's set and sent to the graveyard, you can target and destroy a face-up monster on the field. So that's just in itself is just an extremely versatile card to have, where, I mean, if the situation is where your opponent is using tons of back row removal, you're going to want a card like this to throw in there instead of maybe Dust Tornado, because, I mean, if they hit it twice, I mean, that's 2 of their monsters gone. That, I mean, opens up so much for you. So I would say it's just a really good card in a lot of circumstances, but not every. So I don't think I would really main this card, but it's definitely good to have in the side deck where you just throw it in there. I mean, if they get comfortable where they think you don't have any sort of Wild Tornado or anything like that, and they just start popping your back row, I mean, you hit them with this, and it's tough to deal with. I mean, like, they burned a spell or a trap card, and then they are going to lose a monster card. So, I mean, that's just, it's basically you get a 2 for 1. So it's just really helpful to have that option just in your side deck. But anyway, so this is my deck. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions for what should go in there, or if you've had any experience playing this deck or playing against this deck. And so real quick, I forgot to mention that you can pretty much run any skill you want in this deck. I usually opt for the standard Destiny draw, which lets you basically get any card you want when you're in a pinch. But you can also run the It's My Lucky Day with 2 or 3 dice Foom, or there's a couple other ones that are definitely possible in this deck. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. And until next time.